From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. When you think about it, Governor Lincoln Chafee's surprise announcement that he wasn't running for re-election wasn't all that surprising. His poll numbers were barely old enough to vote, and he hasn't been shy about voicing his displeasure with what he calls the negativity that has surrounded his first term. On the day of his announcement, I met up with him for a live one-on-one interview at the top of our 6 o'clock news. I began by asking him how becoming essentially a lame duck will impact his ability to govern.
I see it as helping. Once you get out of the political realm, I think it's easier to govern. I've been through this a number of times as a councilman, as a mayor, as a senator. I do think once the season is off, the campaign season, you can be more effective. And it's not just the time that you have to devote to campaigning, but also just the issues are easier when you're not involved in a campaign.
As you listed out your resume there, Mayor of Warwick, U.S. Senator, Governor of Rhode Island, nearly 25 years, and City Council, of course, nearly
with the local issues such as schools.
Nearly 25 years of public service. How emotional a decision was this?
Well, I still feel like I'm young, so I don't see this as a culmination of a public service career. Who knows what might come down the road, you just don't know. But I know I want to devote the next year and a half to the issues that Rhode Islanders care about and not be campaigning so hard. This is going to be a hard-fought campaign. And the issues and the challenges we have in the state are enormous. And I want to focus all my time and energy on those challenges and issues.
As you pointed out, this was lining up to be a difficult campaign. Some people might say, looking at the poll numbers, well, he's just bowing out because he didn't have a shot. Respond to that.
It's a combination. It's a combination of everything. Talking with the family, the tough campaign that was coming up, a primary campaign, and my fervent desire to make this state the best in the country, which it should be, and its history supports. Great economy back in our history. We need to bring that back. It's going to take all my energy to do that.
Do you think you would have won?
I do. I've been through so many campaigns, and a lot of them have been as an underdog. Everyone has been difficult. I have never had an easy campaign, and so I'm a competitive person. And I think I could have, if I really put my energy into it, could have prevailed.
You sort of said who knows to what's next for Lincoln Chafee, but are you out of politics forever? Do you ever see yourself running again for office?
Anything's possible, and the main thing is we do good things such as this new school here in Newport. That's what I want to see happen throughout Rhode Island for the next year and a half. Good things happening with education, good things happening with infrastructure, good things happening with our distressed communities, Woonsocket, West Warwick, Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, East Providence. That's where my priorities are going to be. That hasn't changed.
One more question, if I could, for Rhode Islanders maybe who don't follow politics very closely. What do you think your legacy is going to be?
Well, certainly honesty and principled leadership. As I said at the press conference this afternoon, if you look up principled leadership in the dictionary, you'll see a picture of Lincoln Chafee on difficult issues. And you can count on me to be unwavering when there's a conviction, whether it's immigrants' rights or marriage equality. I stand strong.
All right, Governor Lincoln Chafee, our sincere thanks for joining us today.
And I'll even add, be careful about foreign entanglements that we get into, and that's the latest issue we're talking about, and certainly my vote against the Iraq War. That's the
well,
legacy.
Then I have to ask you, I mean, they want me to go back, but does that mean you are against a military intervention in Syria, which the president wants to see?
Yes, I differ with the president on this.
Okay.
Once again, the force of America should be used in a different way.
That was my live one-on-one interview with Governor Chafee on the day he announced he wasn't running for re-election. This week on Newsmakers, The Analysis, our political roundtable with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, Rhode Island Public Radio political analyst Scott McKay, Eyewitness News political analyst Joe Fleming, and political strategist Kara Cromwell. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Welcome back to the show. It's really good to have you. I've been looking forward to this all morning. All right, let's go around the table and just one-word answer if we could. One name only. Who benefited the most from his announcement, Ted?
Angel Tavares, I think.
Scott?
Ditto.
Angel Tavares.
And Kara?
Rhode Island voters.
Wow. Well, then why don't I just jump to a question later, and we can start with you, Kara. If that's your answer, what is his legacy going to be? Is it going to be turning around the DMV like he hopes, or is it going to be the Christmas tree? What's his legacy?
Well, that's actually not why I said the Rhode Island voter. I said the Rhode Island voter because now you have a kind of an open campaign that can really be about vision. You have, kind of two types of elections. You have one where people are running against the incumbent and one an open seat now, where you've got the opportunity to lay out your ideas and where you see the state moving. So that's why I answered the Rhode Island voter being the winner here. I think his legacy is going to be mixed, to be honest. I think he's going to go down as not having a particularly successful administration in moving the things forward that he really wanted, except for these little things that would pop up, like the Christmas tree.
Scotty?
No, I think you
I
have
know,
to look
Scott.
at the total of it. First, marriage equality, which is a big thing to people who care about that issue. Secondly, reinvesting in education after the horrible Kachuri years. Well, you have to understand what Link Chafee inherited. 12% unemployment, this ridiculous 38 studios deal. Cities and towns teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. He's reversed a lot of those things. He's got a lawsuit out there on 38 studios, which the judge says can go forward. You've got some people with deep pockets like Wells Fargo that may have to kick up millions and millions of dollars to the state, and the taxpayers can get some of that back. He came in with 12% unemployment. It's down to 8.9. He's trying to rebrand the 195 area in downtown Providence as a knowledge district. He had no supplemental budget for the first time in years. State agencies didn't overspend their budgets.
But you have to
pension
point all
reform,
these things
though,
out.
Scott.
Do you think that sometimes he gets in his own way?
Yes, I don't think he's a good politician. Then again, we've had governors who weren't great message politicians. Link Allman, for instance, who had a very successful governorship. The economy was great. Fidelity came here. The mall got built in Providence. And yet he was not a good politician.
Joe?
Those are all good things, Scott, and I agree. Those are all things that Chafee has done. But the voters aren't going to remember those. The average voter is going to remember the Christmas tree. They're going to remember the death penalty. That's what they're going to remember about Lincoln Chafee.
Well, then they're dumber than 4 cords of wood.
Well, be that as it may, I think the other issue is that he wasn't able to do marriage equality on his own. I mean,
Nobody does anything on their own at the State
Well, of
House.
course,
You have to
my
have the
point is, Scott,
legislature.
is that he can't take credit for something like that when you had a giant public affairs effort behind it.
But when Dr.
assembly
Chair
that
was governor,
behind
it wasn't going to happen.
That's
Well,
true.
he would
You
not
had to
sign
have
the
the right
bill.
governor.
That's true.
Okay,
That only happened
so
because
concede
Chafee was
that.
governor. governor.
So let's look ahead then. Let's look at the primary. Obviously, he changed his affiliation to a Democrat. So we were looking at a potential three-way primary: Angel Taveras, Gina Raimondo, Lincoln Chafee. One of them's gone now. Ted, you said Angel Taveras benefits the most from this. Why?
I think Angel Taveras and Lincoln Chafee were looking at the same slice of the electorate as their base next year in the primary. Latinos, liberals, and labor is my shorthand for it, and not to say that's all they would have gone for, but I think they would have been making a very similar pitch. Gina Raimondo is obviously not going to be the candidate of public sector unions, of state workers who aren't happy with the pension law. Angel Taveras, already you hear Bob Walsh, the head of the teachers union, often points to how Angel Taveras takes a more conciliatory approach to pension changes and things like that. I think having Lincoln Chafee out of the primary makes it a clean choice for voters between Gina Raimondo and Angel Taveras, and I think that helps Angel Taveras because I think Gina Raimondo was going to be able to split them more easily, split those voters more easily between the two of them if he'd stayed in.
And what's their path to victory, Joe?
Well, the thing is, those, as Ted's describing, are the more traditional Democratic voters. And at a traditional Democratic turnout, that really benefits Angel. What Gina has to do now, I believe, to be victorious is she has to increase the voter turnout in the Democratic primary. A Democratic primary, the voter turnout can go as low as 78,000 to up as high as 160, 170,000 in a high year. I personally, anything under 140,000 is going to benefit Angel because that's where the unions are a lot stronger. If you get over that 140, that will help Gina. She has to run a Bruce Sunland type Democratic primary in order to increase that turnout.
But she doesn't have the Bruce Sunland money just yet.
She does.
She's
She'll have
getting
it.
there.
She'll have it. The advantage that Raimondo has right now is money. She's sitting on $2.1 million. She's been a great fundraiser. Taveras is under $1 million. He needs more money. Her challenge is that 1 out of every 3 votes in this primary come from Central Falls, Pawtucket, and Providence. That very much helps Taveras out. Now, Joe's right. To the extent that she can juice the turnout in the suburbs, getting the unaffiliated or so-called independent voters to come into that Democratic primary, I think you're probably right on 140,000, 130 maybe even. She needs to get 20 or 30,000 votes out of the burbs, areas like the North Kingstowns, the South Kingstowns, some of the Cranstons, Warwicks, to balance off the urban core of Providence and the Blackstone Valley, where I think Taveras should be strong.
One thing on the money front, where I think that Taveras wasn't necessarily the clear winner of the Chafee dropping out, is that before you looked at the treasurer as the front runner, and you had both of them spending against her. And if you just use loose numbers, we'll call that, Chafee $2 million and Taveras $1 million spending against her. Now you only have that $1 million spending against her. So in that way, she's the winner because could be a potential winner of this because
but the other way
she's got
that
less
helps
spent
Angel
against her.
Tavares is freeing up donors who are going to send their money to Angel Tavares. And that sort of begs this question. Why did he announce now that he wasn't going to run for re-election? Seems early to me. Was it to help out Angel Tavares in his fundraising efforts, or was there something else there? Anybody
I think Scott actually had the best insight into that in your column this week.
Well, he sat down with his political command, and they laid out in very stark terms, I'm told, how steep a climb re-election would have been. And I think he just said, look, why prolong this thing? What's the point of doing that? They told him that if he was going to run again, this would have to be a rough, negative, nasty campaign. And he probably decided, why give $2 million of his fortune to Channel 12 here and Channel 10? And you might lose the election anyway. And why go out on a negative note? Now he can spend the rest of his time doing the things that he says he wants to do for the state, working on
And
jobs.
as you said, he hated that scorched earth kind of campaign.
That's not him. He's a competitive guy. He doesn't mind throwing bombs. He did it against White House. But the fact is, I don't think he wanted a real slime ball campaign.
We had some other past governors who basically didn't know when it was time to leave.
That's correct.
And they ran for re-election. Bruce Sunland.
Yes.
When he ran and lost the Democratic primary.
Ed Dupree.
Ed Dupree. After he beat Bruce Sunland by 0.6 of a point, came back and ran again.
Right.
And he had no chance at all. No one gave him a chance, but he wanted to keep the office.
Sure.
I think there's a little bit too, though. I mean, Election Day is the day when voters get to give you your job performance review. And I think that for Chafee, maybe he didn't want to get that review. Maybe he's stepping out. And maybe Dupree and Sunland were more inclined to finish it out.
Well,
I
look,
don't
the
know.
other thing is the longer Lincoln Chafee has been in front of statewide voters, the more support he's lost. And of course, there's big impacts in each election of their own. But he got 57% in the 2000 Senate race, 47% in the 2006 U.S. Senate race, 36% in the governor's race. He's lost, almost 20 percentage points of the electorate had gone away from him. They always had different choices and there were different factors. But I do think, a very strong politician might have held on to a lot more of that 57% through various elections.
Let's face it, the last general election for governor in the state was very strange. It didn't resemble a general election. What it resembled was a big primary. You had 4 or maybe 3.5, depending on how you feel about block, serious candidates out of 7. And here comes the winner with 36% is all he got. That's the traditional blowout loser's share in a 2-person race.
And he basically started that election with 36%.
And they ended it with it.
Right. The key there was Robitaille and Caprio to keep them moving up and down, and Chafee holding on to his vote.
And of course, the Caprio shove it comment really helped.
But
Chafee
remember,
a lot.
you said Chafee got 36%. He basically got no Republican votes in that election for a man who was a Republican before. The Republicans totally left him. His support was non-existent. So it was hard for him to get over 36%. He got about half the Democratic vote in that election.
Yeah, I mean, he won. His best city was Providence, where he got 52%. Right. It's the most Democratic city in the state. And here's a Republican turned independent, and he wins the election based on Providence, East Providence, and Cranston, Warwick.
I got to cut everybody off. We have to go to a break. We've been focusing a lot on the Democrats. I do want to pivot to the Republicans when we come back. Stay with us. This is a political roundtable on Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. This week is a political roundtable, and I really wish we were rolling on the commercial break because some of that discussion is the best, although the FCC would fine us. To my right is WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi. We have Scott McKay from Rhode Island Public Radio, and we're also bringing back, we sort of woke you up out of a slumber. Political season started early. Joe Fleming, our political analyst. And,
brought him back from Block Island.
We did. You were at Block Island yesterday. Get back here, Joe Fleming. Yeah. Something's going on. All right, I said we wanted to talk. We've been talking a lot about the Democrats, the impact on the Democratic primary. What about the Republicans? We hear about Cranston Mayor Alan Fung is a likely candidate for governor. Do we hear about any other governors that might give him a primary? Maybe John Robitaille. Is Ken Block going to become from a moderate to a Republican? And in a strange way, does a primary help the Republicans? Any thoughts, Joe?
I think a Republican primary does not hurt them because in most cases, Republicans have primaries that are very civil. They don't go after each other very negatively. The one time they did was Chafee-Laffey, and Chafee lost the race. But Don Kucheri had a primary the first time he ran for governor. That gave him name recognition he did not have. Lincoln Amin had a primary. Remember, he wasn't even the favorite. Ron Makeley was the favorite. He was the congressman. And Amin won that primary. That wasn't nasty. So Republican primaries helped them.
Otherwise we'd all be out covering, the Democratic primary, and the Republican candidate would be ignored.
I still think it's going to be Fung. I don't think John Robitaille. I know he said he's rethinking it, but he doesn't seem like he has the fire in his belly to jump in and do the race again. Though I do think he ran a strong campaign in 2010, considering the limited resources he had. So he's not someone to totally rule out if he decided to. Ken Block, the Moderate Party founder, clearly is flirting hard with joining the Republican Party, but I'm not sure Block can beat Fung, who's been a lifelong Republican, versus a guy who's in the Providence Journal saying, I'm taking polls to see if I should be a Republican this year. I think that's going to be a hard sell to a primary electorate.
I think it's tough for Ken to turn around and put a label on after he spent so much time pointing out what was wrong with both parties. Like, they're so flawed that I have to start a new party, and then for him to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm one of those. I think that's tough. And on top of it, I don't think there's a path for him because, Republican primary voters are tiny, tiny sliver of Rhode Island anyway. And he's insulted them all practically individually at this point.
Remember now, you're talking about a Republican primary as low as 10,000 voters, maybe up as 35 or 40,000 in a real high turnout. So it's very difficult. You spend a lot of money for a small amount of voters. And I agree with you. I see John Robitaille thinking about it. But I think if Alan Fung gets in the race, I don't see John Robitaille running.
Scott, what is we're expecting to hear candidates announcing in the fall. What's the science behind that when they decide to announce a run for governor?
Mainly because you can raise money then. People want to know when push comes to shove. For a lot of people, there's only so much love money out there. A lot of people, frankly, want to invest and get close to who's going to be the next governor. And until you actually, sign on that dotted line and put yourself out there, raising money is more difficult. It's easier to raise money if everybody knows you're running.
And I agree with Scott.
Dear diary.
Yeah, I agree with Scott, period. Also, end of the year, the fundraising, fourth quarter closes. In Rhode Island, you raise by year, not by cycle. Right. So they can get 2013 money, and then January 1, 2014, they can go right back to their donors.
And that's something people at home, that's an important point that people don't realize. It's different from a presidential race where you raise a certain amount over the cycle.
Right.
Here, that's part of why Gina Raimondo's advisors have had her raising so much money so far before she hadn't even decided to run for governor, because that money's no longer available to collect in 14. If you get it in 13, you can go back to those people in 14 and say, give me $1,000 again.
The one trailing now with money, though, is Alan Fung. He's well behind. However, I think what you may see with Fung is outside groups coming in and dropping $1 million on the state. Republican governors.
Because that's worked so well in the past. No, I mean, seriously.
No, but I mean that's the way they could help Fung, by bringing outside money into the state.
Outside money, as you know, is all based on polling. If the Democrats have a bloody primary, the history in Rhode Island, if the past is prologue, look at 1984, we ended up with Ed DePreet because Solomon and Walsh beat each other bloody in the Democratic primary. In 1994, Mirth York and Sunderland went at it, and we ended up with Almond as governor, a Republican. And then in 2002,
White House.
Kucheri comes out of nowhere after Tony Pires, Sheldon Whitehouse, and again Mirth York beat each other up in a high-level primary. So Fung could be sitting out there and once again could be the beneficiary of a nasty Democratic race if he has a shot at winning.
And that's when special interest money comes in.
I want to pivot back to Governor Lincoln Chafee. The reason we're all sitting around this table is because he announced this week that he was not going to be running again for re-election. Ted, at the press conference, which kind of caught us all by surprise, he called us all down to the Department of Motor Vehicles.
I made it.
You made it. And there, he continually brought up wanting to see a constitutional convention. What
that was fascinating. The governor, we were peppering him, why are you deciding this, why are you doing this? And Chafee, in his sort of, the way, he walks around his point, but he kept coming back to the idea that Rhode Island needs to have a constitutional convention. Every 10 years, hell or high water, that voters are asked on the ballot, and next year they'll be asked, should there be a constitutional convention? Last one was in '86. Governor Chafee thinks that the balance of power between the state legislatures, the General Assembly, and the governor's office is way out of whack, too much tilted toward the lawmakers, and it leaves the governor unable able to be really effective. And he made pretty clear he's going to push pretty hard and use as much as he has the bully pulpit still to argue for that. And I think what's interesting is I could imagine a scenario, if there wasn't such hostility between them, of Chafee linking up with like Don Kachiri and arguing together, look, we differ on policy, but we've both been in that governor's office and seen that you cannot get your arms around the General Assembly. They just do whatever they want.
Well, two governors, though, that do not have high polling numbers right now for popularity. But isn't that the irony here? We're spending so much talking about the governor's race, and yet our governor's model here is so weak. It's
a weak governorship, and everyone who's governor finds out sooner or later that the General Assembly runs the show. We had this separation of powers, yakety smack. Guess what? What a joke that turned out to be. The only way to change this, and Chafee probably understands this, and we all do because we've been around for a while, or me and Joe have anyway, is to give the governor the kind of powers that, say, the governor of Massachusetts has. For instance, a line item veto in the budget, more control over picking judges, more control over budgetary.
Putting something on the ballot. How about that?
But if we have a constitutional convention, Scott, how are they elected? By representative districts.
They are.
Which means the
the
representatives
Exactly.
are. The General Assembly still will have a great control over the Constitutional Convention.
That's the way it turned out last time. If you go back to the 80s, what did they do? They talked a lot, and then in the end, the biggest thing that came out of there was this anti-abortion constitutional amendment, which led to the 2-to-1 fight.
I'll tell you one thing. Lincoln Chafee also told all of us, he told you there, that he could see himself running again. He is one of the few politicians I could imagine running for the Constitutional Convention after being the governor. No one's told me that, but I could see him doing something like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
He's
another.
quirky enough.
Someone would have done that too.
Another race that I
Someone
think is
did.
going to heat up this season is, if Angel Taveras, well, he doesn't necessarily have to run for governor. He just has to not run for a second term at City Hall in Providence. And we're already seeing some potential candidates line up. It's a long list, but we know Jorge Elorza, the former housing court judge, is on there. Council President Michael Solomon, Brett Smiley, are some on the list. I've even heard possibility of House Speaker Gordon Fox. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And the big question, of course, is will Buddy Cianci run? Everybody wants to know that. But you had, if I'm right, you had Mike Solomon on Rhode Island Public Radio.
Yes, we did have.
What did you get out of him on that?
I think he needs some more work on the issues and some more policy work, frankly. Is he ready for prime time yet? He's probably not. However, he does have strengths. First of all, he has a base. He's actually been elected. A lot of these people nowadays, the Brett Smileys and even Elorza, some of these other folks, think for some reason that mayor is an entry-level job. They've never run for anything before. And I will tell you
Angel.
two things about.
But he
ran for Congress.
That's true, yeah.
He wasn't elected.
And he'd been involved in political stuff. I think the one thing I will say about Mike Solomon, he won't be outraised in money, and he won't be outworked. He's a very good retail politician. He's been pretty good herding the eels, as I call it, which is being president of the Providence City Council. So really herding
Worse
cats.
than cats,
herding eels, worse than cats. It's a very difficult job. There's 15 of them. They all think they're parish priests, and they only care about their backyard.
Doesn't being city council president come with the same baggage almost as a second term of mayor, where you've made a lot of decisions, maybe a lot of unpopular ones, and that stuff can come back to haunt you?
Not necessarily because you're running in Providence, right? Part of the problem for a Providence mayor running statewide is the rest of Rhode Island is skeptical of Providence. If you're running for the mayor of Providence, people in Providence will be like, but that place is terrible. They might feel that way.
Yeah, but your record will be highlighted once you start running by your opponents.
I will say one thing for Solomon. He has worked very closely, and when you talk to him, he tells you this. He's worked very closely with Mayor Taveras. And in the past, we saw Cianci completely fight all the time with the city council. Yeah. And there's been a real partnership there between the council and between Mayor Taveras. Now, part of this may just been because times were so bad and they had this ridiculous deficit that they had no choice but to work together.
And that race is going to be really interesting because there's got to be another tax increase on the way. There's got to be another budget's coming. So you're going to have council candidates who are in the position of talking about what they would essentially do differently than the current administration. It's going to be very hard for them to
the current administration runs for governor.
Right. So that's going to be a tough position for Mayor Taveras, too, because essentially it's going to be a discussion about his administration. It's going to be hard for everybody to be a cheerleader.
Taveras has more landmines in his current job, I think, in his way than Raimondo does.
Yes.
Right? You can stay quiet as the treasurer.
Oh,
He's got to run the city of
Think
Providence.
about this. Every time he leaves the city of Providence, oh, he's out campaigning. He's not
General-
doing his job. I mean,
General-
that's tough.
General Treasurer is a sleepy backwater of state politics, let's face it. There's not much goes on there. Whereas Providence, mayor, there's murderers.
Yep.
You've got to raise taxes on people on the east side, the most vote-rich neighborhood. The commercial tax is high. The city has pension
Well, and
liabilities.
by the same token, he's, all of his issues, they give him the opportunity to be on the front page of the paper or to be covered
Sure.
by the news media, whereas,
Getting blown up, though, sometimes.
Well, perhaps, but it's still, just spell my name right? And you don't even need to pronounce it correctly because you're reading it in print. But no, it's true. I think he does have more free media opportunities as
For the
mayor
record,
of
I do
Providence.
have to pronounce the name right.
Yes,
so.
sorry.
As does Scott on the radio.
All right, listen, we are out of time. I want to thank all of you for joining us on the program. I have a feeling we'll be back pretty soon to do another political roundtable. From Rhode Island Public Radio, Scott McKay, of course, WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi, Eyewitness News political analyst Joe Fleming, and we welcome back Kara Cromwell, a political strategist. If you missed any of it, it's online, WPRI.com. That's also where you can find Nesi's notes and other political coverage. He gave a thumbs up. I want to thank you for watching. I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.
All right, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, was